I've been in a new apartment for 3 months, but I'm not sure I've ever been truly alone. I thought the rent was too good to be true, and well, I was right. There's a difference between a house that is settling and a home that's unsettled. But let's back up. It all started when I found the perfect place. Well, so I thought. Hi, I'm Senam. You can call me Sem. Kindly subscribe and don't forget to turn on your notification bell. Now, let's dive right in. Apartment hunting is a special kind of hell, isn't it? The endless scrolling, the disappointing tours. At that moment, you will realize getting a nice and safe apartment to live in isn't easy at all. After 2 months of searching, I was getting seriously desperate. My budget was tight. My patience was even tighter. And I was about to resign myself to living in a shoebox next to a freeway. And then I saw it. The listing was unbelievable. A one bedroom in a beautiful serene neighborhood with a hardwood floors, high ceiling, huge windows, and the rent was a steal. I mean, it was 20% cheaper than anything else in the area. I know that's a massive red flag, but I was blinded by the promise of affordable charm. I called right away and met the landlord that afternoon. He was an older guy, stooped and tired looking, with eyes that always seemed to be looking at a spot just over my shoulder. He showed me around the apartment, and it was better in person. Sunlight was pouring through the big old wavy glass window. It smelled like an old paper cider. It was a nice apartment. It felt like a home. The landlord seemed so eager, a little too eager for my liking. He kind of rushed through the tour, ignoring my questions about the neighbors and the building's history. When I asked him why the rent was so low, he just mumbled something about wanting a quiet long term tenant. As I signed the lease, he barely made eye contact, and I noticed his hand was trembling a little bit when he passed me the keys. I should have paid more attention to that, but I didn't, and I don't know why. And on a more serious note, I'm surprised why I didn't wonder what he was so nervous about. All I could think about was the incredible luck. Getting an apartment that was so cheap. My new life was about starting. I spent that day unpacking with a stupid happy smile plastered on my face. The apartment felt like a warm hug. I had no idea that hug would soon become a chokehold. The first night in a new place is always weird. Every creak and groan of a building unfamiliar. You are sort of learning the language of the space, and it's normal. I was setting up my bed, surrounded by a fortress of cardboard boxes, when I heard the first sound. It was a faint tapping. I stopped so I could listen well. It sounded like it was coming from the ceiling. My first thought was like, maybe it's the neighbors upstairs that is just walking around. I brushed it off and went back to fighting with my duvet cover. But a few minutes later, it came again. It was rhythmic and sounded deliberate, not like a random footstep. I told myself it was just the pipes because old buildings make weird noises sometimes. I finished making the bed, turned off the light, and crawled under the covers. The exhaustion of the move hit me like a ton of bricks, and I started to drift off. Just as I was about to fall asleep, I heard it one last time, right above my head. A chill went right down my spine. It was definitely something, I presumed. But as I lay there in the dark in this new unfamiliar apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling to the extent that I began to feel I was being watched. Over the next few days, the tapping became a regular thing. It was always at night and always from that same spot on the ceiling above my head. I tried to drown it with music, but it was so persistent. Then I remembered what the landlord had told me. He mentioned the apartment above me was empty and undergoing some slow renovations. There was no neighbor at that moment. And that was when the real fear started to creep in. About a week after I moved in, the sound started to change. The tapping was replaced by something way more disturbing. It started as a low, mournful hum. I would be reading on the couch, and this soft wailing sound would just drift through the apartment. At a point, I thought it was the wind, but it had this human quality to it. It sounded sad, as if someone was quietly weeping as well. I started feeling on edge all the time. The safety and comfort my new apartment was supposed to have was turning into a constant low grade anxiety. I felt totally alone. Who was I going to tell this? Hey, I think my apartment is crying. They will think I'm even losing my mind. One night, the weeping was louder than ever. My hands started shaking, but I pulled out my phone, determined to get a proof. I hit record, held my breath, and pointed the phone at the ceiling. The moment I pressed the button, the sound stopped. Everything just went dead silence. I waited for 10 whole minutes and I didn't hear anything again. It was like it knew I was trying to record it. Then, for about 4 or 5 days, there was no noise again. Nothing at all. Everywhere was quiet. I started to relax. I convinced myself I was just imagining it all. It's the stress of moving to a new place. I felt so stupid for being so scared. And for a moment, I felt like I could breathe in my own house. The night came back again. It was different. It wasn't a tapping or weeping. It was a sound that made the hair on my arms stand straight. It was this fractious, desperate scratching, and it was coming from inside the wall right next to my head. It sounded like a trapped animal creeping to get out, but it was rhythmic, and there was an intelligence to it that made my blood run cold. It would scratch for a few seconds, stop, then start again in the exact same spot. I couldn't sleep. I just lay there, frozen, listening to this horrible sound just inches from my head. The next morning, I decided to investigate. The scratching had come from a section of the wall covered in old floral wallpaper. My heart was hammering in my chest as I ran my head over the spot, and I felt it. A corner was peeling away. I pulled at the paper. It came off easily, revealing the crumbling plaster underneath. And I scratched on that plaster over and over, and there it was, a single word written on it. Listen. Okay, I know this is getting intense. So if you are finding this story compelling, please take a second, hit the like button, and believe me, you will want to know how this ends. Seeing that word, it broke something in me. There was no denying it anymore. This wasn't just a random noises. Something was trying to communicate with me. I became obsessed. Sleep was a luxury I just couldn't afford. The scratching was a nightly torture. The weeping was a constant sad companion. My beautiful apartment had become my own personal prison. I needed answers. I went straight to the internet for a deep dive. I searched the building's address, old newspaper archives, public records, anything I could find. And for hours, nothing. Then I found it. a local news article from the 1950s. The headline made my heart stop, and it reads, Local family struck by tragedy on Elm Street. And that's my new address, my new apartment. The article told the story of Jason's family. They lived in apartment 4B, and that's where I'm living right now. They had a 7-year-old son called Thomas. One afternoon, he just vanished from the apartment. No signs of breaking, no witnesses. He was just gone. The police investigated the parents, but the case went cold. And the article ended with one chilling detail. The mother, Eleanor Jason, slowly lost her mind. She claimed that right up until the day she was committed, that she could still hear her son crying and that she always hear him scratching from the inside the walls trying to get out. That night, everything came to head. The weeping started. It was louder and more desperate than I've ever heard it. It filled the whole apartment, a physical wave of grief that made my teeth ache. Then, through the sobs, a new sound appeared, a tiny faint whisper, a child voice, and it was whispering a name. Mom, Mom. My blood ran cold. Then came the scratching, but it wasn't from the wall this time. It was from the door of my bedroom closet, a slow, deliberate scrap from the other side. I was paralyzed by a fear so deep it was almost quiet. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. All I could do was stare at the closet door. The scratching stopped. The silence in the room was heavy and suffocating. And then the doorknob, the brass knob on the closet door, started to giggle, slowly at first, then more violently. Something was in that closet, something that had been weeping and scratching and calling for its mother, and it wants to get out. That's what finally broke me free. Some deep primal survival instincts just took over. I didn't scream. I didn't grab anything. I just stumbled off the bed, scrambling backwards. My eyes locked on that rattling knob. I turned and ran. I burst out of my apartment. Didn't even close the door, and I didn't stop running until I hit that cold, unforgiving light of the street. I spent that night in my car. I parked a few blocks away, just watching the sun come up. The moment the landlord's office opened, I called him. My voice was harsh. I told him I was breaking the lease and leaving immediately. I was expecting him to get angry and argue or even a threat to keep my deposit. Instead, all he said was, I understand. There was this deep sadness in his voice, a departure that confirmed everything he knew all along. Just leave the keys on the counter, he said so softly. I will mail you the deposit. There was no way I was going back in there alone. So I called a friend and we went there during the day. The apartment was really silent. The oppressive feeling from the night before was gone, replaced by a strange empty stillness. It just looked like an apartment again. But as I frantically threw my stuff into the boxes, I glanced at the wall where I peeled back the paper. That word, listen, was still there. Before we left, my friend went to grab one last box from the bedroom. He came out a minute later and his face was pale. Hey, he said, his voice a bit shaky. Was your closet door open when you left? I hadn't opened it, but I ran from it. But now it was standing slightly ajar, showing just a silver of the thick darkness inside. We didn't stay to find out why. We got the last box and walked out and didn't look back. I now live in a new apartment. It's a modern high rise with a thin wall and zero character. It's bright, sterile, but I've never felt safer, all because of what happened in that previous apartment. It completely shattered that basic sense of security you are supposed to have in your own home. Sometimes I lie awake at night in my new safe apartment, and every time the building cracks, I feel very terrified. I will never know for sure what happened to little Thomas Jason or exactly what was waiting for me in that closet. And honestly, I don't want to know. But sometimes, on nights when the city is quiet and the air is still, I think I can hear it, a faint distant scratching, and I'm left with one terrifying question. Did I really leave the hunting behind in that apartment? Or a small piece of it followed me here? That's my story. It's one I really had to tell. Has anyone else experienced something like this? Or have you ever lived somewhere that just felt wrong? Share your own creepy apartment stories in the comments below. I will be waiting to read them. And if you made it this far and want to hear more stories that will keep you up at night, make sure you subscribe and turn on all notifications. Stay safe out there. Bye.